perhaps following my presentation, then I can address any questions that they have.
Okay, all right, so you can explain about they should all have the handout, okay?
The handout, great.
Right, okay. So although I can't see anyone, I know, I'm assuming everyone can see me, see my pet bird on my shoulder. Aha, there.
Yes, yes.
So it's my trained bird, he just flaps there all the time.
Now, it would have been even better if you just had a little bit of white spot there on your shoulder, you know. Has that happened to you as you're strolling your beach?
Sorry?
Has that ever happened to you as you stroll your beach?
I'll tell you a story one day of a first date where that happened to me.
That's great. It happened once to my brother as he was sitting next to me being a real jerk, and all of a sudden, bing!
Yeah,
it was wonderful.
Yeah, it happened to me when I was really trying to impress someone a few years back. Yeah,
oh.
Yeah, not very embarrassing. Okay, look, I'm going to introduce you to everyone. Everyone knows you anyway, and then I'll let you get on. I'll turn my video off, turn my mic off, so you can't hear me and you can't see me, and then you can just you know, get into it. Okay. Okay, so everyone that's listening, everyone that's watching, this is Kelley T Words. One dialogue, he stands for. We'll find out. Terrific, I imagine that's what it stands for.
Yeah, that's it. Or terrible. Kind of depends on my mood.
We've worked together on a few projects recently, you know, for kids. But Kelley has been doing this for years and years. She's one of the, well, if not the most foremost child hypnotherapists in the world. So I'm going to hand over to Kelley. Have a fabulous time, everyone, and enjoy. Okay, I'll say goodbye and I'll switch myself off. Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you, Freddie. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be on a FredTalk. And I love this series, and I love your generosity of how you share so much just so freely. And, you know, I subscribe to that belief too. And I have someone that wants to say hello, of course. Mr. Nutty is here just for a little hello, and now he's leaving. So I have been in private hypnosis practice here in Washington State in the US for 18 years. And like many of you, I got a traditional certification course. Mine lasted over the period of 1 year. It was at a community college. And in it, I learned a lot of basics. And I learned a regress to cause approach for helping my clients. And within a couple of years, I realized that I needed more. And I was reading a lot, and I felt pretty isolated here. It was really before all of this wonderful connection to the internet that we have now. And for those of you that are new to our field, you are very lucky because for years I operated pretty much in isolation. But I was finding that I was limited in how I could help my clients, especially the ones who had chronic issues. And luckily, after a few years, Scott Sandland started the hypnothoughts.com site. And through that site, I was introduced to Michael Ellner. And Michael Ellner passed away last year, unfortunately, but he was a very gifted hypnotist and very creative. And he and some of his cohorts had created a process, a program called quantum focusing. And within this program were a series of brief self-directed exercises that they used to help these kinds of clients that I was concerned about. And from this, Michael and I evolved, and Alan Barsky evolved quantum focusing into a newer rendition, which we call Hope Coaching. And what I'm going to be sharing with you today are some of the recipes from our Hope Coaching program. And I hope that you will be able to enjoy them. You're going to have some experiential learning here and apply them within your own practice. But before we do that, I would love to just get all of us into a wonderful mindful learning state. And so if you would play along with me, and you can certainly close your eyes because we know that that makes it even easier to engage the creative imagination. And let yourself recall a time when you were so curious. And you know, often curiosity is a real trait of a child, isn't it? And it happens that curiosity is also an important element of mindfulness. But just let yourself go to a time when you were making a discovery, or you were noticing something new or different around you. For example, this morning, I was in my hot tub. I'm lucky to have one. And I was watching the steam just rising up in the cool air, and I heard a crow calling to me. And off in the distance, I live near the water, were the sounds of a ferry boat's foghorn. And I felt the sensations of the warm water around my body. And my thoughts just kind of drifted in a bit of a daydream as I became really absorbed in this experience, not having to worry about what I was going to talk to you all about today, not having to think about what I might have for lunch or what the next week will look like. I was there in that moment, just curious about how I felt, what I was hearing, the sensations around me. And I wonder if you can also capture that sense of absorption and curiosity about what you're going to be experiencing right now in this moment, but in the next hour. And notice how easy that is to engage your imagination and your attention in this way, creating an expectation for learning some new things, or maybe even having some things affirmed that you already know. And of course, having fun with me here. That's right. And then bringing yourself back to awareness here, opening up your eyes if you have them closed, and noticing how just even for a few brief moments, it's so easy to pay attention in a different way. And really, this is what we do as hypnotists. We help people pay attention in a different way. Many of our clients that come to us have been paying attention to things in their life or things in their body in an unhelpful way. And when we help them change that, we help them notice different aspects of whatever's going on, or maybe tapping into some other different kind of resource, we can change everything for them. So some of you probably are wondering, what is mindful hypnosis anyway? And in fact, I saw a few comments that, oh, they're excited to hear me talk about mindfulness. Well, mindfulness is different. Mindful hypnosis really engages that creative imagination in a resourceful way and helps a client direct themselves towards healing. Mindful hypnosis contains many different recipes, some of which you're probably familiar with, but we have customized them in a way that they can become tools for a client to use. It's a relaxed, absorbed state that really excites and engages the imagination. Now, we know that one of the benefits of hypnosis is, of course, activating a healing response. And much of the general public believes that hypnosis means that they're unconscious, they're out of it, or maybe even asleep. And often in our pre-talk, we need to educate them about that it may just seem like they're sitting in our office with their eyes closed. Might not really feel any different, or then again, it may be quite different. I like to explain to clients that if this is awake and aware and this is asleep, then hypnotic states are that whole range in between. And I know I've heard Freddie say that he believes that we're in trance state all the time, and I agree with that. And I like that frame because when a client comes to me, they're in some kind of a trance, and maybe not a helpful one. They might be in an eating trance, or in a pain trance, or in a stuck in the past trance. And so again, it's our cause to help them move into one that's going to be more helpful. Well, mindful hypnosis certainly allows them to be able to shift those states. And so you're going to be experiencing in a little while some of those example recipes. One of the reasons why I really like to use these processes rather than just reading the script to a client and moving them into some kind of somnambulistic state is that because I'm then empowering them. I'm giving them a skill set that they can use even beyond whatever issue they have first presented with, because life happens, stuff happens, and if we have these skills, then we can better navigate it. And what's even more important is that by using these, we start to take advantage of neuroplasticity. We can start to actually be our own brain surgeon. We can, and nervous system doctor, we can change those neural pathways because it's through the repetition of using these techniques that we start to rewire things. And really, in many cases, it's not realistic to believe that in 1 or 2 sessions, a person who has struggled for a lifetime or 5 or 10 years with some kind of issue is going to have a spontaneous recovery. Now, we know that happens, and we can certainly hope for that. It's wonderful when it happens. But in many cases, it's going to be that repetition that's going to get them into a state of wellness. So we can use these brief, easy self-directed techniques to take advantage of that neuroplasticity and also bioplasticity. Bioplasticity, the ability of the body beyond the nervous system, muscular and other systems of the body to move into self-regulation. What's wonderful about all of these techniques is that they are evidence-based. They're not alternative. They're integrative to any other kind of techniques that your client might be using. And because of that, I've had a lot of acceptance into my local medical community. I get a lot of referrals from medical professionals, and I have medical professionals coming to work with me too. In fact, the first book that Michael and I wrote was for physicians to help not only to help their patients who suffer from chronic pain, but to help themselves deal with the chronic stress of being in the medical field. We know that that can be a pretty demanding field, especially nowadays with all of the red tape and insurance regulations and demands on medical professionals' lives. So, if you're looking to expand that area of your practice, really keep in mind what you can do for that professional themselves personally, which of course will affect them professionally. What is a chronic issue? You might be surprised at how many of your clients actually qualify for that. Obviously, chronic pain qualifies, and the medical model is if it's lasted anywhere more than 3 to 6 months, then it's starting to become a chronic issue. And in fact, a lot of the recent models show that in a case where an injury or the surgery has healed and people are still feeling the pain, it's because the nervous system has gotten stuck in that loop of relaying that signal, even though there isn't anything wrong anymore. And we know that the pain signal is a message typically that there's something wrong. So this is like a false flag. And hypnotherapy can certainly rewire that. And these brief exercises tasked to the client will help that happen even faster and permanently. We also have sleep issues. I just recently started working with a man who hasn't been able to sleep for 2 years. And so between our sessions, he's come in twice so far, and him using these mindful hypnosis things, his sleep is being restored. Even issues of dementia onset, Alzheimer's, the suffering of these things can be alleviated through mindful hypnosis techniques. And when I talk about the suffering, that's really the impact of having a chronic issue, whether it's pain or discomfort or limited mobility, lack of sleep, digestive issues, suffering is determined not just by how these affect a person physically, but the meaning that they put to them and how it impacts their life. And we can make a huge difference when we are giving a client tools so that they can address these things on their own. We're empowering them, and they start to move out of what they might be stuck in, which would be helplessness or hopelessness. And we want to inspire that hope. One of our slogans for our hope coaching program is hope is realistic, and it is. And that hope can be anything. When I'm working with a client at end of life, which unfortunately happens, I work with a lot of cancer care clients because I'm on our town's cancer care clinic's integrative team. Some of these people are at end of life, and everything medically has been done for them. And at that point, hope for them might be, a day of comfort or being able to see their grandson's birthday. And so giving them something that they can grasp and improve their life, even at end of life, it's just an honor to be helping those people. And so some of the things that I'm going to be offering you here today, you can apply in cases like that if you're working with these folk. So chronic issues can encompass a huge range, and just keep that in mind, that these techniques are great for anybody, but particularly for these clients. And I think it's really important to teach them to them because it will create belief and expectation. And I use these at the beginning of a session. So usually in a conversational state, although they can certainly be done in deeper states of hypnosis, because they're going to create that belief, that expectation. When they feel some of the shifts that these techniques are giving them, it will be even easier for you to use the hypnotic rituals to make more change happen. It primes them for it. And again, it's already activating those changes in their brain and in their nervous system. And of course, as I mentioned before, this empowers them, gives them some things that they can do where previously they might have felt helpless. And it supports the work between your sessions. It's just as important as giving them a recording that they can listen to entrain to your voice and to trigger that relaxation response. Now, what's very important is, of course, making the case for people to use them. How do we get people to do what we need them to do to make our work together even more effective? I'm sure that you've had the experiences of a client coming in for a second or third session, and you ask them, well, did you practice that thing? Did you listen to the recording? And they'll say, oh, I forgot to. So this happens, and I feel like it's my job to really make the case, to explain to them, the science of what happens when they do these things, but also to make it as easy as possible for them to do these things. And that means keeping them simple, keeping them brief. I work with a lot of teenagers. Teenagers do not like work, and they do not like homework, but they don't mind doing a little short, brief thing every now and then to make themselves feel better and to give themselves a sense of control. You've probably heard this phrase, hypnotists go there first. And I think that this is vital. We need to be able to get out of our own head so that when we're working with a client, we can really be present. We can engage in active listening. We're not distracted by other things going on outside of that session. We're not distracted by what techniques we're going to use. And when we use these mindful hypnosis strategies, we start to move into that kind of very organic and instinctive state of being. It's amazing how it works. And I will testify because in the early years of my career, I was pretty uptight, and I'm kind of a perfectionist, and I wanted everything to go right, and I would spend hours preparing ahead of time for a client, researching and deciding what scripts I was going to use. And luckily I wasn't dependent on reading them, but of course, at some point or another, we always use a script, whether it's in our mind or in a book. After a while of saying the same things, it is a script, and that's perfectly fine. And scripts are wonderful for learning new pattern, new ideas, and new language. But when we're caught up in all those kinds of details, we're not really present with that person in front of us, and we miss on a lot of cues. So employing that active listening, where we're really paying attention. I'll tell my clients I'm not a talk therapist, but we're talking right now because I'm gaining information. I'm gaining fodder for what I'm going to be doing. And, this is so important because we want to utilize those salient personal details that a person brings to you. And I think that this is really where a lot of the finesse of our work comes in, and it separates, a mediocre hypnotist from someone like Freddie, who is an artist. And encouraging yourself to be able to do that means that you need to get out of your own head so you can practice some of the things I'm going to be offering you here to develop that natural inclination to go there. One of my favorite ones, which I'm going to teach you now, and some of you may already be familiar with, and that's great because every time that we learn something, it changes a little bit. So maybe we learn it from someone else and we get some other tidbit from it. What I'm going to encourage you with all of these things that you're going to experience here today is that you make them your own, that you bring your own flavor to them. And when you do that, they will become more organic and they'll be able to flow very smoothly for you. So this technique comes from our Hope Coaching program, and we named it the Emotional Detox Technique. And it's basically an NLP anchor collapse. It's not limited only to emotional states. It can be used for any kind of physical sensation too. And when I'm teaching this to a client, I'll explain, I might even, especially if it's a younger client, might even draw a picture of some trees, a forest image, and then show how at some point, whatever issue they have, whether it's pain, whether it's anxiety, whether it's a habit of chewing their nails or pulling their hair, at some point, their brilliant mind came up with this ability to do this thing, and it created that neural pathway. And then I'll draw the path through the forest and show what that looks like. And through every repeated activation of that pathway, it's strengthened. And I'll explain to them how those neurons that fire together wire together, until after hundreds, maybe thousands of repetitions, the brain, the nervous system forgot that there's another way to go through the forest. And what we're going to do here shortly is going to create a new pathway. It's going to create a detour. So this is one of the ways that I frame it. And of course, knowing your client is important. Some people don't care about those kinds of details. Some people like to know every single factoid about it, and they really like the science. So make sure you're not just throwing, pearls to pigs and it's of no interest to them. So I will adjust that for who my client is. But this emotional detox works to shift those neural pathways. And it is what I call a state shifter. And I love it because once you teach it and the client has learned it, once you've learned it, you don't have to really think about it. All you do is have to have an awareness that whatever you're feeling right now is unhelpful to you. And I use the terms unhelpful or helpful rather than negative or positive or bad or good, because that releases judgment from it. Now, there are times when even feeling like anxiety can be helpful, right? I use the example, if I'm in my grocery store parking lot at midnight and I'm feeling some anxiety, that's probably a good thing, even though I have a second-degree black belt. Did you know that, Freddie? So I'm not going to be just ignoring that sensation and lollygagging around the parking lot. I'm going to do my business and get out of there. But if I'm relaxing at home and watching the sunset and I'm feeling anxiety and there's no reason for it, then I don't need to feel that. And I could use this technique to move out of that feeling. So I'd like you to play along with me and let's see how this feels for you. What I'd like you to do is to bring up some thought or sensation. Maybe you have, some pain in your body or discomfort or itch or something going on, or maybe somebody in your life is annoying or irritating you, or maybe you're worrying about something that that maybe you're afraid might happen. Whatever it is, just bring that thought to mind. Don't make it be anything really huge, please, because we're here on the internet and I can't come and hold your hand. But something that is bugging you, bring that to mind. And as you do, notice where you feel it in your body, because of course, your body's always responding to whatever you're thinking about. And let's go ahead and calibrate that response too. This is important in order to ratify the change later. So if 0 is none and 10 is a really strong response, you can see where you are on that scale. And if it's not very high, you know that if you think about it a little bit more, maybe in a little more detail, you can even elevate it. I don't want to torture you here, but I want you to get enough of that feeling so you can notice it. And as you do that, with your right hand, just make a fist. We're going to associate this physical gesture to these thoughts and these feelings. We just hold it for a few moments. And then open your hand, relax it. Take a nice deep cleansing breath. We can even use our eyes opening or closing them. This helps move us out of that state and into a new one. In the new state, I would like you to think of perhaps a perfect day for you. You're doing something that you enjoy. You feel good. It's a perfect hair day, Freddie. You notice that your mind is calm. Your heart is happy. Maybe your spirit is playful. And as you feel this helpful state, with your left hand, make a fist. Let's anchor that fist to this state of being. And then open that hand and relax it and take another one of those nice, deep cleansing breaths. Now we have the third step, the final step, and this is where we're actually going to create that physiological shift in your brain, in your nervous system. I'd like you to take both hands, place them into fists, and we just hold them for a count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Take another nice deep cleansing breath, and as you exhale, you can open your hands, open your eyes if they were closed, and notice how you're feeling now. Probably pretty good. And you can check in with that original unhelpful feeling, see where it is now. Chances are that it's dropped down quite a bit, or it might even have disappeared. Now, everybody will notice some shift at some level. When I do this, that unhelpful thing just kind of goes off behind my shoulder. Now, I might be able to resurrect it if I really went digging around, but the whole point is to be able to move quickly out of that unhelpful state into a resource state. And what I love about this technique is that it is so simple, of course, that you don't even have to really think very much. You just have to be aware that this doesn't feel good and there's nothing you can do about it right now, and then tap into a resource state. And those resource states can be anything. They don't have to be related to this at all. They can be your favorite meal, a wonderful piece of music, a child's laughter, your best vacation spot, anything that you want. And whatever you choose is what you're going to be left with. So you can customize that so that it would be appropriate to whatever you want to be doing. If you're stressed out and you can't sleep, What does it feel like to be so drowsy, so tired your eyelids won't stay open? It's like you're floating on a cloud. Or maybe it's after dinner and you're so fatigued, you're worn out, it was a busy day, but you really want to go for a walk. What's it feel like to be energized? You get the drift. Or I like this one. Maybe you had a rough day at work and your significant other wants a little romance, but you're really not in the mood. Ooh, you can certainly remember some times when things were really hot. So you get to choose. It gives you autonomy over how you're feeling and how you're responding in your life. And imagine how empowering that is for your clients. But I want you to imagine now how you would be using this process, this simple 3-step technique, maybe between clients, so that you can get out of your own head and get out of that story as you move into the next case. Or maybe before you get out of your car when you've arrived home from a busy day. Or how about using this before you eat? Which state do you think is going to be more conducive to mindful eating, which is key to healthy eating? Be creative with this, play around with it, and let me know how it works for you. All you need to do is follow the order of operations. Begin with the unhelpful state, move into the helpful state, and then activate them both. The mind cannot engage with both of those at the same time, so it taps into the most recent one, and that's why this works. It's an anchor collapse. It collapses the previous one. And of course, the more often you do this, the more it becomes your norm to be living in these positive states. You begin to self-regulate. You begin to be someone like Freddie, someone like me, who, no matter what's going on, we're okay. It's a marvelous thing. So let me know how you enjoy this. I put a template in the handout that you got there. A lot of the things that I'm talking about, there's some information and even some links there for you. And the only caveat that I will say about this, especially when you're working with young people, is to help them identify what those emotions are that they want to move around. They wouldn't want to use these to, silence helpful signals to them, things that they need to respond to. And it's a great opportunity to raise their emotional intelligence in this way. So one of the other mindful hypnosis techniques that I use quite regularly is just a brief self-hypnotic technique that lasts 60 seconds. 60 seconds, even the busiest person can find 60 seconds during their day to de-stress, to activate the relaxation response. And we know in our busy cultures, we are often just in that chronic stress state. Many of us live in the part of the world where productivity is valued. And that means that for some of these people, it's hard to do nothing. They have been raised in this culture that your self-worth is based on what you're doing instead of just being. And so to help these people understand that it's okay to take a break every now and then. In fact, we can take advantage of a natural rhythm within us, the ultradian rhythm. And I'm not going to talk too much about it because I suspect Richard Hill might be addressing that. With his association with Ernest Rossi, who really coined the ultradian relaxation response phrase. But this is a rhythm that cycles about every 60 to 90 minutes within us. And it's designed to move us into a rest and digest state just briefly. Now, you might be familiar with it if you've ever kind of found yourself spacing out. That means that was kicking in for you. And it's almost like a little reboot. But what happens with our busy schedules is that we override it. We ignore it. And instead we reach for some caffeine or sugar in order to, get that false energy boost. And over time, over years of doing this, of course, it taxes and fatigues the adrenal glands, because when we're doing that, the adrenal glands are emitting stress hormones to keep us going, to push us through. And we can address that by doing these mindful hypnosis techniques on a regular basis. And this 1-minute self-hypnosis technique is ideal for it. And I'll tell you how I do it. It has several elements to it. And one element comes originally from Jerry Kine, and it's the metaphor of a light switch. I even have my finger like this, and I have my client mirror me. And you can imagine which position is which. You might even be doing that now. So when we use a light switch metaphor, in this context, we're talking about the eyes closing and opening the eyes. But I also tell my clients that they're not restricted to eye closure. They can simply look down. Look down at your lap right now, or down at your feet, and notice what that does. It really blocks out the outside distractions even more. And so this would be helpful for someone who wants to use this technique if they're at a workplace or at school, or maybe in the grocery store line. I always get in the long line every time, and sometimes it's a really amazing thing because it gives me a chance to meet some incredible people. But sometimes I might be in a little bit of a rush. And when I notice that tension coming in, I could just look down and do this 60-second process and feel better. So we have the light switch metaphor, and then we engage in rhythmic breathing. And rhythmic breathing, for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, means breathing to a pace and even to a count. And there are many different recipes for this. One that I teach my clients is kind of triangle breathing. So they're going to breathe in to the count of 5, and they're holding it for 4, and breathing back out from 5 down to 1. It's a pretty simple pattern for if you have a client who has some restriction to their breathing. Of course, tell them to adjust that. It shouldn't be uncomfortable, but it is different. It's deeper breathing so that we get in more air, and we hold the breath so that there can be the proper oxygen exchange. Simply by breathing in this way for a short period of time, it moves our neurology. We move out of the stress state and activate that relaxation response. So this is just a wonderful, what we can call bottom-up approach. Top-down approach is when we're changing our thoughts to change how we're feeling. Bottom-up approaches means that we change our physicality to change how we're thinking and feeling emotionally. So we have light switch, we've got rhythmic breathing, and it's important to pay attention to those numbers. We hypnotists love numbers, don't we? And one of the main reasons is that numbers distract the conscious mind away from whatever is preventing a person from really getting absorbed in a hypnotic experience. So this is the basic recipe that I will teach people. For a client that perhaps has some hypnosis or meditation background, and of course for my colleagues who do, I'll even add another element to that and allow them and inspire them to do some visual imagery with those numbers. Perhaps they imagine the numbers written in the sand, and the wave comes in, erases one and reveals the next. Or maybe those numbers are like clouds floating by. Or they might be even like, in an old-fashioned movie, there'll be a calendar and the pages tear off and fly off in the wind. Or perhaps they have some other idea that resonates with them. So they can certainly have that. And then they could take it to another level. And they can use this 1-minute mindful hypnosis technique to engage with a positive intention. Now, we all have goals, and we help our clients clarify their goals in their work with us. And often those are long-term goals, which are great. They're creating the blueprint for our subconscious mind to follow. But in order to make those goals happen, we need daily action And we can formulate those in affirmations or positive intentions. And most people can do something for one day. And so I will suggest that they start creating a positive intention the night before. When they're just drifting off to sleep, they can have that goal for the next day. Maybe it's going to be drinking more water. Maybe it's going to be walking during the day, or some other action that's congruent with their long-term goal. Well, imagine when they are practicing this mindful hypnosis 1 minute process, that they shut off their light switch and they do their rhythmic breathing, and they engage in seeing themselves, feeling themselves, engaging in that positive intention. Can you imagine if they are doing that several times a day, what's going to manifest? They will be doing it. And over a period of time, say a week or 2 weeks or a month, all of these will compound and get them to their goal even faster. So there are lots of different ways to use self-hypnosis, and within just this technique, I've given you several different recipes. But let's go ahead and do it ourselves now for a minute. I want you to experience it and see how easy it is for you. And you can, of course, make it your own and choose any of those variations that I gave you. So have your light switch on to start with, and I will just count to 3. When I reach 3, shut off your light switch. Engage in that rhythmic breathing in whatever way feels right for you. And when a minute has passed, I'll alert you and bring you back. So you ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Shut off your light switch. That's right. That's right. And then turn your light switch back on. Notice how that feels. Perhaps you were already pretty comfortable joining me here in this webinar, but maybe you brought it to another level. And can you imagine doing this periodically throughout your day? The benefit that your physical body will receive from that your mind will receive from that. Sometimes I'll suggest to clients that they use some device to help remind them to do that. There's a wonderful free app called the Mindfulness Bell, and you can program it for any kind of frequency. I have one set on my smartphone so that it goes off hourly. It doesn't go off exactly on the hour, but it might be a little bit off so that it surprises me. And when that beautiful chime comes on, it reminds me to just check in with myself. And if I'm feeling tension, if I've been sitting too long, I can do something different. I can do this 1 minute process. I can get up and stretch. I can drink water. I can laugh out loud. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So there are many ways that we can remind ourselves to do these things, but it does help to have a prompt there so that it becomes a habit. And giving clients these kinds of ideas will make it even easier. And, you know, I often ask that question, like I did of you, can you imagine when you would be doing this? Because I want them to be going through that scenario in their own mind, because then it's creating a mental rehearsal, and there's a much better chance that they will actually use what I'm teaching them. So some other mindful hypnosis techniques that I use involve metaphor. Metaphor is the language of the subconscious. When we're talking in logical, rational, factual manner, the conscious mind is absorbing that knowledge, and the subconscious mind is often like this, boring. But when we start to use metaphors, like the light switch, it wakes up. It engages in that, because that is the seat of our creative imagination and our emotions. And so it's as simple as asking a client to give some kind of metaphor representation of whatever it is that they're struggling with. You know, often clients arrive with their own frozen, paralyzed metaphors, don't they? They'll use words like, oh, I feel, you know, like I'm blocked, I'm stuck, there's a wall I can't get past. My insomnia client, he said that insomnia is keeping him a prisoner. What a great metaphor he gave me. These clients will provide you with what you need. And so, of course, in our work, I, you know, helped him find the key to that prison. And in fact, I told him that Rumi says, why stay in prison when the door is wide open? Well, that was a suggestion, wasn't it? So metaphors can be used in many ways. Some of you are familiar with object imagery, where we objectify a feeling, we pull it out visually, you know, in the imagination, and have it there in the mind's eye and start to manipulate it. And even when we do this, it changes how the subconscious feels about it, so it can change the level of suffering that a person has. It's almost a magical process that goes way beyond logic and rational thought. And this is the magical part of hypnosis, isn't it? But you can do this in a conversational state. And I love it when it's very interactive. I tell the story of a man who came to me with intractable back pain. It was so painful, he couldn't even sit still in the chair in my hypnosis office. And I asked him, I said, you know, if that feeling in your back were an animal, what would it be? And he stared at me and he said, it's a grizzly bear gnawing at my spine. Well, that still gives me a shudder thinking of that. And so I asked him, what do you want to do with that grizzly bear? And he thought for a moment. He said, I want to put it into hibernation. And I said, go ahead and do that. He closed his eyes and he described to me the scene in the forest, deep in the forest. It was snowing, and the snow was coming down, falling silently. And there was a cave, and he watched the bear go into the cave. And the bear went into the cave and laid down, and he could hear the bear starting to gently snore. And the snow kept falling, and everything became very cool and calm and comfortable. And his whole physiology changed as he just kind of sank into the chair and he rested. And I just left him there for a while, experiencing that comfort. And after a while, he roused himself and he said, oh, and if I do too much, the bear will start to grumble. Wasn't that client a genius? All of our clients are geniuses if we just excite their imagination and provide that space for them to utilize it in these ways. And so I love using metaphors in my work, both in those informal occasions like that or in deeper hypnotic trances. Any kind of parts work is working with metaphors, isn't it? So I often will use body parts, and I've included a template script in that handout for you about how I do that. But allowing a client to talk to different parts of their body, it can be really powerful and transformational. A few years ago, I fell from a ladder and dislocated my shoulder. Well, it was pretty painful. And I'm really not into pain medication. I don't really take any medication at all. I'm very fortunate. And so I was using self-hypnosis, but it was still pretty painful. Well, Dan Cleary called me because he'd heard about this accident. And he said to me, talk to your shoulder. And then he hung up. That's Dan Cleary style. And so I thought, okay, I'll do it. I had about a 20-minute conversation with my shoulder, and my shoulder had a lot to tell me. And I had some things to tell my shoulder. And then I talked to my other shoulder too. And it said it would help out during the healing time. And I called Dan back and told him that that was the turning point for me. I could feel something just released. And from that point on, it wasn't always super comfortable, but the worst was over, definitely. And so, whether a person has pain going on in their body or they're wanting to make change, help them talk to their body. Every cell of the body has a mind of its own, and it's listening. I use this a lot when people are wanting to make habit change that involve their hands. For example, anything eating, smoking, drinking, hair pulling, picking, whatever it is, those hands are complicit, aren't they? And if they can get a wonderful dialogue going with the hands are going to start to respond differently. And it's a very fun platform too. And I think it's so important to take a lighthearted approach, especially people who have chronic issues. Michael Elner used to say that they suffered from FDD, Fun Deficiency Disorder. So bringing in this playful spirit, it not only makes it easier for people to engage, it appeals to the subconscious mind, that childlike part of our mind, but it also differentiates you from any other kind of therapy that they may have been getting. And I think that that's really important because we hypnotists are different. We're offering a solution that is unlike what they've ever seen before. And that's why they come to us, even when they come to us out of desperation. So one of the ways that I can make it playful is to introduce people to laughter therapy. And I wrote a book some years ago with Dan Berman called Laughter for the Health of It. And it's based on the principles that our body doesn't really know the difference between laughter that's based on real humor or just simulated. And, this is interesting because our subconscious mind acts in that way too. It doesn't know the difference between real and fantasy. It starts to respond as if it's really happening. And a lot of the exercises in our book come from laughter yoga, which was pioneered by Dr. Madan Kataria in India. He's a cardiac surgeon who was looking for some different ways to help his patients. And he realized that just laughing at jokes was making them feel better, but then the jokes started getting stale, and he discovered that just doing simulated laughter had the same results, and he came up with these really easy and fun to do exercises. Well, I did a spin off of EFT for it, and I call it Laugh and Tap. And this is one that I teach clients, and some people are a little self-conscious about engaging in these things, and that's okay. Other clients just jump right into it with me, and you might feel the same way, and you can follow along with me if you want. At the very least, people can do this in the privacy of their own home, or maybe in their car. Just make sure if they're doing this when they keep a hand on the steering wheel. But this is all that it does. You just tap on those EFT tapping points and you laugh out loud. And I'll do it and you can join me. See how it feels for you. Ready? Ha 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 ha. And I like this one. Okay, being goofy. Do you feel that? Those of you that participated? Does something, doesn't it? Yeah. And this is a great stress reliever. Laughter exercises can help people with chronic stress and anxiety. It exercises all of the internal organs. It elicits those feel-good neurochemicals so that we've got the endorphins going, and it's a great bonding exercise. So I often suggest that families engage in this. So time is running a little bit short here, but what I want to show you one more thing, which is my mindful hypnosis model of time. And this is a process that I think is an idea, concept that can be really helpful for people that are stuck in the past or worrying about the future. And it is said that we're in one of 6 places at any time. We can be in the past in a positive or negative state. We can be in the future in a positive or negative state, or we can be in the present in a positive or negative state. So examples of that would be if we're thinking about something that someone did to us or something that we did that we're unhappy about in the past, we're stuck there. If we're remembering a great vacation or a good meal, we're in the past in a positive state. If we are worrying about something that we're afraid might happen, well, there we are in the future in a negative state. But if we're looking forward to a fun time, seeing a good friend, we're in the future in a positive state. And then we have the present. Now, most of the time, we're okay, just like we are right now. My friend Roger Moore likes to say, if I'm breathing, I'm okay. I love that affirmation. But sometimes stuff is happening. You know, we're in the middle of chaos, or we're experiencing pain or loss. And when we're feeling an unhelpful state, whether it's chronic pain or anxiety or depression, we can ask ourselves, where am I on that timeline? And if it's not working for you, you can move. It's as simple as that, using your creative imagination to move. Or if you're in those two things and you're actually okay here in the moment, then you can use mindfulness practice to get in touch with your breath and bring yourself back into the present. But many of my clients have found this model to be a wonderful tool, and it gives them almost, after using a little bit, of a really quick pattern interrupt. And again, starts to rewire those neural pathways of how they are thinking and feeling and being. And this is what we want them to do. We want them to be able to find the state that's going to be most helpful to them. Now, I remember I was called by a gentleman to come to an assisted care living place where he and his wife had an apartment, and she had Alzheimer's, and she could carry on a conversation, but she really wasn't with it, and she certainly couldn't give consent to a hypnosis session for me. So, but I did talk to her, and one of the problems going on relayed by the husband was that she had some pretty bad jaw pain, but she wouldn't let the nurses give her pain meds, and the pain would awaken her at night, and it would wake him up. So neither of them got any sleep, and a lack of sleep certainly makes it more difficult to deal with pain. Well, she told me probably a half-hour story about their honeymoon 60 years prior and how wonderful it was in Hawaii. So I took that fodder and I made a recording that was all based on that experience. And every night then, the husband would put that recording on, and together, that's where they would go, back to that wonderful experience. Because being in the present really wasn't wonderful for them. And this proved to be curative, and she became much calmer, and her pain was, they were able to manage her pain. So be creative with these and encourage your clients to be creative. There are, like I said, make them your own. There are so many variations, and you know, I've shown you just a few here. There's another that I don't have time to demonstrate for you today, but it's a belly meditation, and there's a script in that handout for you. And I like to use that a lot, and I share that with my clients, and it can be helpful in so many different ways. But I hope that you got a lot out of our time here together, and please consider me a resource. I'm available, on Facebook and by email. My information's in the handout. And if you want to learn more about Hope Coaching or about any of the things that I've shared here today, just let me know. So thank you very much for joining me. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, can I just say, if you can hear me, I'll just say that it was fantastic. There's so many nuggets in that hour. And I'm still smiling and laughing from doing the laughter tapping. I've never done that before, but it was hilarious.
Isn't it awesome?
I did make a little note to say that I am going to do it on the bus tomorrow just to see what happens. So
please,
if you don't see me again, it's because I've been arrested.
Oh, you know what? You got to get somebody to film it too, because that will be a classic. I did some laughter therapy on the plane with my son going down to Palm Springs one year. He was a little bit anxious about flying. He hadn't flown in a while. And so I started doing laughter therapy. And our kids get so embarrassed by our behavior. He begged me to stop.
It's very catching.
It totally distracted him from any of his anxiety. Then he was only embarrassed. Embarrassment is preferable over anxiety anytime. Don't you agree?
Yeah. But that was absolutely fabulous, and the minute that we did the minute sort of light switch, that seemed to go on for about half an hour. I don't know how long it actually was. Was it a minute? It seems a lot.
It was a minute.
No,
it was a minute.
I was. If it had been any longer, you wouldn't have heard from me again today. I'd still be there. So no,
fabulous.
Thank you very much. And you can see by the chat, how much everyone has enjoyed it. I will be recording this, so. And then I'll put it out. I'm sure, as I said, it's got a real value and fantastic hour of knowledge and sharing and caring. I know you're fabulous now. Maybe a few more people know you are as well. So, thanks for doing this for us all. It's very good of you.
Well, thank you very much. I can't actually see the chat room, so.
There's a little chat thing at the bottom. Can you not see it?
Let's see here. Oh, there it is. Hi, everybody. Sorry, I had it off and I didn't want to be distracted by you. Yeah, so I don't know if, Freddie, you want to take any time for questions, or they can just email me.
Well, if you want to, there's a Q&A thing. I've never used it before. It's just someone at the moment, it's just someone asking. But if anyone wants to click on that Q&A, I think they can ask questions. So if you've got time to answer a few questions, that's fine.
I'm fine. Maybe you don't want to record this part of it, but we can just keep it on informally.
Well, Denise Ward says it's the best webinar she's experienced. That's good.
Oh, thank you, Denise.
And there's Sydney calling in, saying hello. I mean, you can see those as they come up.
Hi, Sydney. I didn't know you're in Edmonds. We're just a little hop away from each other. Come on up to Anacortes and see me.
Yeah, so
thank you, Sarah.
It was fantastic, and as it always is. Obviously, I've worked with you now on a couple of occasions doing some kids stuff, so I know it. But it's nice for everyone else to know who. I'm sure everyone does. I mean, you're famous, but for anyone who hasn't seen you before, they now know how brilliant you are. You've got books out, haven't you? Are they out on Amazon?
Yes, I do. I do. I'm working on some other stuff too. So there's always something new to do, isn't there, Freddie? I love it.
And I'm just editing our 2 days of King course we did in Las Vegas. So mostly editing out my annoying bits, to be honest with you.
You're wonderful.
I realised how often I interrupted or coughed or whatever. So anyway, it'll be a lot better once I'm out of it a bit more.
Well, you know what? We're human beings, and I love that. So, and I love you. And for those who are new to me, and I'm new to you, thank you for joining. And you're now in my orbit. So we're all in this together, and keep doing the wonderful things that you're doing.
And likewise, keep teaching everyone. I mean, you're a font of knowledge, and the people the fantastic people you work with and collaborated with, and those kind of people don't do that with people who aren't full of love and which is the thing that I get from you more than anything else. It's what comes across. It's why you're so brilliant with kids. They get that. They like animals. They sense when someone's good or bad, and they can tell that, you know, without speaking. So that's why you're so brilliant at what you do. But I thank you again. And you know, I'll say goodbye. There's a few questions there. Have you got them? Let me have a look.
Nope, just thank you for the wonderful comments from everybody. And the handouts. Freddie, did you attach that?
I did.
That handout?
You should have had a reminder email, and it's attached to that. Okay. So that's where that handout is. But if anyone doesn't, if for any reason hasn't got it, if they want to either email me, I'll send the handout to them. But it was brilliant.
Thank you, Dan.
I'm going to go and do some market tapping.
That was fun. Now I'm going to go and have more fun this day, and you have a good night, okay?
I'll have a lovely day there. I'll say goodbye.
I will.
Thanks again.
All right. Bye, everybody.